What's something you suspect but can't prove? Story 1. The screen is more sensitive for ads on Reddit than for posts. I'm not a programmer, and I don't even know if this is possible, but it seems like anything I accidentally open on Reddit is always an ad. Story 2. Apple made their wired headphones longer when they released AirPods, so that the wires caught on more things, thus demonstrating the need for wireless headphones. Story 3. My dog's actual English vocabulary and literacy level is at least 10 times my estimate from 2 years ago. She's hiding it from me. That much is certain. Story 4. That our phones hear everything. I mentioned something random like I kind of want a kayak, and boom, suddenly, I'm getting ads for paddles and life jackets. Coincidence? I think not. Story 5. That my cousin killed her husband after their house burned down. The speed in which she immediately got with someone else and pregnant afterwards was SUSAF to me at the time. Story 6. A lot of people are in jail for crimes they did not commit when the actual culprit roams free. My suspect is that the percentage of this is much higher than people think, especially in developing countries. Story 7. In HS 2002-ish, me and a friend of mine found a program called NeoTrace, which would take an IP address and show you where on a map that IP address was located. It could also do trace routes to show you what routers or data went through en route to any given IP address. After messing around with it, we noticed that almost everything we pinged went through Puerto Rico. It was really weird. At the time, we joked that it was the government collecting all our internet activities and whatnot. Fast forward to roughly 5 years ago, and having totally forgotten about that, I see an article on Google News titled something like Report Post 911 NSA collected internet activity of U.S. citizens at secret facility in Puerto Rico. Blew my mind. I closed the article, and then about a year later, I mentioned it to a friend and tried to find the article on Google. I could not find a god thing, and still can't. The closest thing I can find is this article that reports that the NSA was running an espionage operation for Latin America out of a naval base in PR. Centro de Periodismo Investigativo Puerto Rico mentioned as part of NSA spying revealed by Snowden's Centro de Periodismo Investigativo. Story 8. I don't even know if it's being hidden, but we're basically living a version of 1984. The elites have realized that they can use media and politics to build a society that the masses simply cannot get to. They use those engines to generate outrage, so the masses fight each other over that doesn't matter, like race or sexuality or whatever, while they extract what little wealth is left, leaving everyone basically relying on them for survival. Everyone's monitored through their smartphones, and while people aren't arrested for thought crimes or speaking up against the government necessarily, media manipulation allows the shady to happen right under our noses, like literally insider trading and implementing tax loopholes to avoid paying their fair share. While we fight each other because the president fell up some stairs or Musk called Trump evil 10 years ago. The worst is that you can't really do anything against it either, because they will ridicule the protests, focusing on a few people there for the wrong reasons, while ignoring real issues like the cost of living crisis, while somehow all the ultra-wealthy people's net worths keep increasing. Granted, we do print more money, but for the most part, the economy is a system that can grow or shrink, but inside that, why are the ultra-wealthy Elon, Bezos, etc. increasing their wealth faster than the larger economy grows? The answer is that for someone to grow faster, someone else must be losing that wealth. And which group of people have been complaining that everything's getting too expensive? The lower classes. Story 9. That the American people didn't actually vote for Donald Trump in droves. There's something weird about it to me, and I believe that's the hold Elon Musk has on Trump. But if I say it aloud, then I sound just like the 2020 stolen election people. Crazy. Story 10. That the audio quality for the Kendrick Lamar halftime show broadcast was intentionally poorer than it should have been so Fox could get audiences at home to whine about the woke black guy. The recorded version I heard on Spotify yesterday completely changed my entire perspective on the show. It was phenomenal. Story 11. There is something that follows me from place to place that I've lived in. It hides my things I've learned through the years to ask out loud if I can please have them back. Once I leave a room for a little while, when I go back in, I instantly find it usually in a place I already looked before, or just sitting in a very obvious place like on my bed. I don't mention this to anyone IRL, because it makes me look crazy, as El Mayo. Story 12. That the Epstein videos are not simple tapes involving underage children. Epstein received billions of dollars from the people he was blackmailing. It makes no sense even if it was statutory rape. Many public figures have overcome that kind of thing. I am thinking that they are snuff videos. There is no statute of limitations for murder. A snuff video could land even a billionaire in prison for life. This is the only thing that makes sense of why those videos have so much leverage on the subjects. I sincerely hope that I am wrong. Story 13. This is sort of my own salty thing. Bear with me. One day at work, I hadn't brought lunch, so I decided to get Uber Eats from a McDonald's that I could literally walk to in 5 minutes. If I wanted, I gave instructions to the driver and left it for about 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then 20 minutes. I think, okay, maybe the McDonald's is slow. I checked the app, and it said the driver had my order and was heading to my location. Cool. 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, I messaged the driver asking where my food was, and I get coming as a reply, an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and 25 minutes. I decide to watch the map since my boss said let me take a break. As I'm watching the map, I'm watching this guy's car go over a nearby bridge about 5 times, going back and forth and around and back and forth until I say it and cancel the order. The next day, I watched the news and saw that at roughly the same time, on the same bridge, someone was driving under the influence and driving over traffic islands, over the sides of people's cars, across lanes, all of that sort of stuff, so I suspect that was my Uber driver. Story 14, the TV show Inside Job was canceled because one of the conspiracy theories was secretly true. Okay, suspect is a strong word, but the idea amuses me, and I certainly can't prove it. Story 15, that people simply do not want to be argued with. Sure. Everyone will say, oh no, I like people who challenge me, but in actuality, everyone just wants to be agreed with, and nothing more. Story 16, Tom Cruise doesn't do his own stunts. I don't believe that he's an amazing helicopter pilot, climber, can fly a jet, blah, blah, blah. He belongs to a cult which encourages lying. It's not that much of a stretch. Story 17, that we are all currently living a simulation. Everything is just so weird. It used to be so normal. No way to prove it, but I'm pretty sure that's where we are. Story 18, a few things. 1. U.S. consular officers are under pressure from their superiors to deny a certain percentage of visa applications from hated countries like Iran. Regardless of how many applicants in a given day meet the criteria to be granted a visa, basically proving that they are not a terrorist, plan to visit, then return to their country without motive to remain in the U.S. illegally. A certain percentage of applicants must be rejected, otherwise the consular officer will risk losing their job. If we look at NIV refusal rates by country, we find a slight correlation with GDP per capita in the broader sense. But if we break it down by income grouping, we find that among middle-income countries, refusal rates vary wildly, and it's often correlated to that country's political relationship with the U.S. too. Police in U.S. states that ban ticket arrest quotas, for example. California still have informal quotas they need to fulfill. These quotas are not enumerated to the officers, but they will receive a negative performance evaluation if they aren't writing as many tickets as the police agency, for example. The California Highway Patrol wants them to write. 3. Israel threatens journalists Russian style to get them to retract true reporting on Israeli crimes. 4. Corporate interests often block efforts to make infrastructure safer because they profit off of people's suffering. More car accidents, more business for collision repair shops, injury lawyers, car dealers, and car rental companies. The insurance companies aren't hurt by this because they just raise premiums across the board to compensate. Having driven in the USA, Canada, and Mexico, I find that road design is worst in Mexico and best in Canada, with the US a decent bit better than Mexico, but still incorporating more dangerous designs relative to Canada. The other day, I was driving in San Francisco and almost got crushed by a semi because our lanes, coming from 2 separate highways merging into one, suddenly merge into a single lane with no warning or directive for one side to yield to the other. I have never seen such a design in any of the 3 Canadian provinces I've driven in. Story 19, the free contact lens cases that come with the contact solution have gotten much larger in the last 30 years, encouraging you to use the solution up faster. Story 20, American elections are bought by large corporations. They endorse those who boost their profit margins more. The election process was never about democracy or truth. Can't necessarily prove, but it makes sense. Story 21, I suspect there is a plane of existence over the top of this one that we as humans just can't see or experience. Like if there are colors, we can't see waves doing their thing. Who's to say there isn't another layer of something? I am nowhere close to being a scientist, and am definitely not going to send like religious experiences. Just hard to believe that what we experience and measure is everything. Story 22, back when the internet was fun, there was a site called the World Question Center. Maybe it still exists in some form. This very question was asked. The answer that stuck with me was something like, I believe people gain an evolutionary advantage by believing in things they cannot prove. Story 23, I believe in magic. Not like frou from magic, but I've seen and experienced things that have been completely unexplainable. I know things intuitively about people I straight up shouldn't know. I've spoken to the dead in dreams that have told me things I later found out to be true, and I shouldn't have known it. I've seen things fly across the room and break. I've tested theories such as reading people's minds, and I was right. Maybe I'm a psychopath or something. Maybe I should be locked in a padded room forever. But honestly, it's just my theory. I'm not hurting anyone. I enjoy being spiritual. It's my life. I will believe whatever I want. Story 24, all the fuss, marriages, breakups, and stuff in Hollywood is all scripted and part of a huge show in itself. Strategic relationships and breakup and scripted controversy to support movie marketing and also distract general public from shady stuff. Story 25, when you pump a specific dollar amount of gas, when it gets close to the dollar amount, you chose the amount of gas coming out of the hose slows, but the price keeps going up at the same speed as it did at the start. The gas stations can make a few extra bucks that way. Story 26, social media poisoned the societal, starting in 2014 or so. And within 10 years, we will consider it as addictive and problematic for health outcomes as tobacco or alcohol. Story 27, that Elon Musk used Starlink to alter votes in several key areas to help Trump win the election. Now, Trump is paying Elon back by putting him in charge of Doge. Just look at the fact that he shared a conference from the Oval Office today with Elon and gave Elon the floor to speak. Elon Musk, an unelected billionaire, now has a huge role in our government. Why? Why would Trump grant that power to someone other than his family? Story 28, this technology was involved in the DC helicopter crash, was due for rollout in 2025, but I can't prove that it was installed on PAT-25. The NTSB would be able to, though. Story 29, it is possible for humans to be biologically immortal. It's just insanely far out of the realm of our scientific knowledge to a point where it will be generations upon generations before any breakthroughs are made. Story 30, that women secretly hate those non-cotton artificial fibrolacenetic bras, thongs, and up in your crotch panties, and would rather wear those good old cotton granny panties and breathable bras instead. Story 31, Elon Musk has never actually had. All of his kids were created via IVF, and I can't imagine a woman letting that man lay on them like a grunting pile of laundry while simultaneously thinking, let's make little versions of this. Story 32, I'm pretty sure my godmother's daughter, who was living with us at the time, ate my Hot Pockets and then helped me look for them in the big freezer. I can't prove it, but her guilt was palpable. It was years ago, and I'm still perturbed. Story 33, that before plastics as in bags, packaging like everything in the world now comes wrapped in some form of plastic or styrofoam. We had so less cancers. Years ago, you got your fish and chips and paper, your spuds, your cheeses, milk, lemonade, beer, Coke were all in glass bottles. Then they invented plastic the world, and its occupants are. Story 34, cryptocurrency has nothing to do with actual money. It's fully tracked, and because cash is hard to track, it's also decoding something. Imagine you are a shady organization that needs to break some cryptography. How do you get enough power and CPU cycles to break it without anyone knowing? Release a fake currency that isn't actually backed by anything. You can then feed the crypto brute force attacks, releasing a coin when a goal is met. Keep doing it till you have broken the encryption. And since it's reported on the chain, you now have a key. And wash and repeat. Bitcoin is a terrible currency. It can't be replenished. Has a finite number, lots of coins already lost, and it constantly goes up in value, but has no real world thing behind it. Transactions are announced. So, yeah, cryptocurrency is a scam. Story 35, pomegranates aren't real. In a sense they are, but I think they went extinct many hundreds or perhaps 1,000 years ago. But instead of admitting they went extinct, they were replaced by another item that we now call pomegranates. Story 36, I suspect Facebook, Instagram, etc. are listening in on your microphone and using casual phrases you say to friends and family to send you target advertisements. But I can't prove it. Story 37, I think there might be some subliminal messaging going on through media. There have been so many instances where my friends with completely different lifestyles and interests have had the exact same desires, mostly about a random product experience. I would put it up to being coincidence, but having it happen in such a short time period to each other with no contact between the people makes me very suspicious. Story 38, similar to the mattresses plan. I think rug stores are in some way a front. They never have customers in there. They have closing down sales just about every weekend, and every time I've entered one, the supposed sales assistant has had no interest in me at all. Even when I asked about something specific, it was greeted with a vague, "Oh, I think they're over there if we've got any," which, considering I was the only customer I've ever seen in there, I thought was a questionable response. Story 39, not a suspect, but a guarantee. Just have to wait for it. I'm convinced that the average use North American continental, at the very least lifespan, is going to drop down to easily early mid-60s by the time Gen Z and younger generations hit that age, and I have zero problem believing it's largely due to COVID. People who had genetic sensitivities to things like cardiac or other thoracic respiratory conditions like MCOS, POTS, etc., that people my age, including myself, and I'm only 20 this year, are drastically developing these issues in droves. Add on top of that the fact that we can't actually prove if microplastics in humans have any real impact on our biological systems because we can't find a control group. Let me repeat myself here. We literally cannot locate a group of people lacking these microplastics to do sufficient research on its impacts, rising cancer rates in younger groups, and the increasing lack of literacy and access to education. Weakened immune systems add on a foreign substance in the body that we don't know what ITLL do, and a lack of resources teaching you to be properly informed and well-versed on your body is going to lead directly to large numbers of natural deaths that would have been otherwise preventable. This isn't even factoring in the amount of people who will have severe problems developing but won't go to their PCP if they even have one because of fears that insurance won't cover a standard CBC differential blood test, including the fact that primarily American easily accessible food is absolute garbage, and that garbage is normally the more affordable stuff. You think parents of 7-year-olds are feeding their kids chips and pure sugar 247 because they wanna? I can keep going. Unfortunately for us Gen Z and later we're the guinea pigs. History likes to do this funny little thing where everything that is claimed to be perfectly fine and safe at first just means you have to wait till the impacts happen later. We're going to be that later. Story 40 processed sugars are responsible for the uptick in psychological disorders in children like autism and ADHD. We're learning that the gut bacteria microbiome in children with those disorders are markedly different than neurotypical children. The gut microbiome begins forming in infancy and is dramatically altered by foods and medications that the child takes. Story 41, that voters in North Carolina didn't actually go for Trump and that the machine counts were manipulated. The state went with a Democratic governor and AG, and I just don't buy that the top 2 state positions were blue, but then everyone went red for president. Story 42, COVID exacerbated my genetic predisposition to diabetes, causing me to develop type 2 diabetes at 30 years old. I'm 210, 57, and walk to work daily, along with regularly hiking 3 to 6 sizable hikes per month before diagnosis. I kept a standard American diet, which is to say, probably way more cholesterol, sodium, and sugar than necessary, and probably a bad idea for me, but not excessive by any means. My father and grandfather had no symptoms or diagnosis until their 50s. It doesn't add up. I know genetics are tricky. It's not always a means of great prediction, but 20 years outside the average is just insane. Story 43, that rage bait for engagement is actively damaging our brain societies. Making people constantly mad about small dumb things makes us less kind patient with each other and too worn out to care about more serious issues. I don't think this is a massive conspiracy. I think shitty people just love to use this as a tactic, and this is the impact. Story 44, I am surprised I haven't heard people suggest this. I don't think an MCD employee called the cops on Luigi. I think the FBI used methods that they want disclosed to track him and use that as a cover. The local police may have been called, but it wasn't an MCD employee that recognized him and made the call. Story 45, I suspect genetically engineered corn is causing all kinds of health issues in humans. BT corn produces its own pesticide that kills the larvae of the corn borer. It's a pesticide, and it's in the corn. You can't wash it off, and corn in the form of corn syrup is in everything you eat from bread to processed meats. As for the health issues, think back to 1990 if you're old enough to remember that time. About the time BT corn was approved, nobody ever heard of GERD or gastroesophageal reflux disease, and if you had upset stomach you took Tums. Today we have famotidine and omeprazole and Carafate to treat GERD, and a large number of people take them every day. As the son of a corn farmer and a pharmacist, I think we are ingesting small amounts of this pesticide in almost everything we eat. The kicker is this: we can't stop it because pollen from BT corn travels around the world via the jet stream and pollinates organic corn. So eventually all corn will make its own pesticide to some degree. GERD is the most obvious to me result. Who knows what else it is doing to us? TLDR, my theory is genetically modified corn is slowly killing us, and we already let the genie out of the bottle. We can't put it back. Story 46, I suspect that we are in a simulation and that when we die, it's just our actual body taking off the visor that induces the simulation. It's also why our concept of time is weird: time flying, time crawling, years seeming to go by fast, etc. Story 47, I am pretty sure the friend's daughter that my dad had stay with us for a year was actually my half-sister. 1, she looks more like him than I do, and 2, he was adamant that I do not her, bearing in mind that my dad usually encouraged me to as many women as I possibly could. Story 48, mental health lives in our gut biome, and everything can be healed or prevented by food, and our food system is keeping us sick to farm profit for Big Pharma. Story 49, that Musk fixed the election for Trump, and now Trump is afraid to say anything because he doesn't want to go to prison, so he is allowing Musk to do whatever he wants. Story 50, the flu is infecting people, and not just birds. Almost everyone I know has had flu symptoms in the last month. The current administration doesn't want another COVID-19, so they just aren't telling us. Story 51, that the Big Bang Theory is wrong. Many scientists believe the math just doesn't add up. I suspect the universe originated like the forming of ice crystals in a lake. I also suspect that space is not a true vacuum, but a type of liquid that science has yet to find a way to measure, i.e., not a vacuum merely at a lower pressure. Ice crystal-like structures form independently of each other from the base liquid, and only begin to interact with each other once they obtain a certain amount of mass gravity. After that, stars and planets are formed. Story 52, some of the apps on our smartphones are recording our conversations, even when they're supposedly closed. Question is which ones? Definitely Google. Story 53, a local bar has the biggest Halloween party in town, 1,000 first prize, 100 second prize. The discrepancy between first and second prize was always weird for me. The winner is always some guy with insane movie quality costumes like the Predator, and convinced they have an agreement with a professional costume designer. Advertise 1,000. But pay him his regular fee, and no one can argue the fact that he won, because the costumes are insane. Story 54, aliens exist, and are not only disappointed in us, but have little faith that we can get our act together in time to join them before we kill ourselves. Story 55, that maybe there's more to coincidental happenings than just coincidence. For example, someone you haven't spoken to for a long while crosses your mind, and shortly afterwards you receive a call or text from them. Another example, you learn a word or phrase and then come across it 2 or 3 times in the next week. WTF. Story 56, that the conspiracies like how billionaires and the WEF control the world is nonsense, and that stupid people just want a boogeyman to blame for the problems they create by voting for that destroys the world. Story 57, that our understanding of the universe is completely wrong, that what we experience as the universe is just the inside of some kind of being. The Big Bang was the being coming to life. Suns, stars, etc. are just the red-white blood cells. Humanity is just a growing illness or cancer like disease. All the empty spacey in space is just the empty space in between atoms and all that. The universe is growing and expanding because the being is getting bigger. We can't see beyond the edge of the universe because there's nothing there besides this being's skin. An image of the observable universe taken with an X-ray. Looks very similar to a brain. Maybe I need to find some friends. Story 58, someone in the U.S. Department of Ed was related to the CEO of smartboards. In the late 2000s, early 2010s, all of a sudden school districts around the country massively overinvested in this tech. The only problem was no one taught anyone how to use them, and they either didn't work or were never used to their full potential. Someone made a bunch of money on a product that was never fully utilized and arguably never really needed. Story 59, Ivanka is not Trump's daughter. Maybe she's adopted. Maybe she's the pool boy's kid. But that's why Trump is so comfortable talking about wanting to have with her. He knows they're not related. He just forgets that everyone else is supposed to think they are. Story 60, we all see colors differently, but can't tell because we're taught to call the colors we see the same thing. But I think colors look different depending on your eye color structure. One person's red may actually be another person's blue, but we all just call it red. Story 61, we may have created Sims the game, but we are truly living the real life Psalms being controlled by another entity. This is why when you walk into a room, sometimes you stop and forget what you're doing. Your handler just stopped it. Story 62, that the sudden uptick in spot fires all over SCA are somehow being executed by the insurance companies. No, I'm not a climate change denier, I get that part. But hang in there with me. CDF redraws the fire severity maps every year and includes all the year's previous fires that create a circumference around the fire approximate 20 to 25 miles in a circle around that fire. If you live within that new radius, you're screwed. The insurance companies use those maps to justify cancellations. And just saying, with all the random spot fires popping up all over CA like I've never seen before, the whole freaking southern part of the state will soon be under a fire severity area and justified to either raise or cancel your insurance. I know I sound like a nut job, But with every random spot fire that was popping up this season, I kept thinking that's another insurance black hole. My boyfriend is cheating on me. Story 63, I actually think GWB was right about WMD in Iraq. There is conclusive proof that Saddam Hussein used chemical weapons on civilians in the 80s as well as in the Iraq-Iran War. My theory is that as the U.S. prepared to invade in the original Gulf War, the Iraqis forward deployed a bunch of their chemical and possibly bio-artillery shells near the front lines for use against coalition troops. But the air offensive was so massive that those weapons were all destroyed in the airstrikes. This would explain the lack of weapons found after the 2003 invasion, contrary to the well-published WMD program of the ADS-90s. I also think that Gulf War syndrome is a combination of exposure to the oil fires, but also to low concentrations of chemical agents being dispersed from those stockpiles being destroyed. There were reports of chemical weapon detectors going off at the time in the Gulf War, even though chemical weapons weren't used. Story 64, Kendrick Lamar has been propped up by UMG Drake's label to try and take him down. Drake was due for another contact soon, and they did this to negotiate a better price by tearing his value down. UMG boosted Not Like Us with streams, media, press, etc. I would be listening to county stations mixed, and that song would pop up. Jay-Z got Kendrick the Super Bowl as well as all these Grammys. Other songs artists were way more deserving. He did this for Beyoncé too. Shocker, this whole pedo angle is a lie and has been advertised everywhere when there's literally no proof he's not on trial. He's not under investigation. It's just a tear down. Funny enough, Kendrick's main business partners are Jay-Z, who groomed Beyoncé since, 15? Not to mention this recent domestic case that was swept under the rug. Oh, and also Dr. Dre, who's had numerous issues in the past. Look him up. It was pretty much proven in my eyes based off the fact the CEO of UMG, Lucian Grange, was high-fiving Jay-Z Dr. Dre when Kendrick won Song of the Year, a diss song solely off the back of Another Man at the Grammys. Kendrick's Super Bowl performance has finally started to open people's eyes on what's actually going on. He didn't perform his best songs. It was all about Drake, whether it was calling him by name, teasing Not Like Us the whole performance, bringing two of Drake's exes in SZA and Serena. Record labels are gross. Story 65, the Disney movie Treasure Planet was sabotaged to flop to prove to shareholders that audiences were done with traditional animation and were ready to embrace total CG as the default. Later on, I truly believe that Disney did this again and kneecapped John Carter's chances at the box office. See, Disney had been trying to lock down the male 5 to 13-year-old demographic. Pirates of the Caribbean was a great success, but it only had so much shelf life. Do young boys like Tron? Not enough, apparently. How about The Lone Ranger? No. Well, here comes John Carter, no doubt pitched as Disney's answer to Star Wars. And then someone had the bright idea, after crunching the numbers, to just buy Lucasfilm outright. But if John Carter was a hit, it would definitely nix or at least delay their plans to pursue Lucasfilm. So they sabotaged the marketing, let John Carter flop, and prove to shareholders that Disney simply cannot under any circumstances crack the live-action appeal of the young male demographic. So why not buy a brand with plenty of built-in and long-lasting appeal? Story 66, microplastics in the human body are already at concentrations that affect our mental and physiological abilities, and they make us more susceptible to other illnesses and cancers. This is only going to get worse in the coming decades. Story 67, that all the microplastics in our food body are causing and or enhancing all sorts of health issues, autism, gender dysphoria, mental health, depression, etc., making existing issues worse, etc., etc. Story 68, weed-killing products also contain tiny weed seeds, which are immune to the product, so it does a great job clearing your existing weeds. But newer, stronger weeds come back the following year. So you think, oh, I should get that weed killer. It did a great job last year. Story 69, that humans aren't at the forefront of life on Earth. We just like to think intelligence makes us better than every other animal. I think there's no best evolutionary strategy. Every species alive today is alive because it got born with the right stuff. If we set off all our nukes, some species will live on, but it sure as won't be us, so we can't be that great. Story 70, that we're being listened to through our cell phones. I will literally be talking about something out loud to my wife. Then after we're done talking, I'll hop on Google for some random reason, and in the search bar will be an almost identical search for what we were just talking about. Also, I've had ads pop up after conversating that will be about what we were talking about. Story 71, that Luigi didn't kill the CEO. The real killer got away. They selected from a list of people with online histories that would make them look like a potential killer. When they announced they found a bag of Monopoly money in Central Park, they actually found the real evidence. When they picked up Luigi, they planted the evidence on him, so it would stick. It It was gaining way too much positive attention. If the killer actually got away and they never convicted anyone, it would have absolutely inspired way more copycats than it undoubtedly already has. I think he was framed to protect the world elites. Story 72, that the voting machines in the 2024 United States presidential election were hacked, and that the Democrats that know are keeping their mouths shut either to prevent a civil war or to ensure a landslide in the midterm and next presidential election cycles. Story 73, I think the soundtrack for Tron Legacy was mostly made by Hans Zimmer or one of his associates instead of Daft. It was more of a cooperation for marketing purposes. Daft surely made the tracks Endo of Line and Derezed, but the rest like Outland sound much like Hans Zimmer to me, with maybe some little input by Daft. I am a big soundtrack score fan in general, and can identify a lot of composers by their style, and it rings the Hans Zimmer bell for me when I listen to that album. I think that Putin has both financial compromise on Donald Trump, but he also has video of Trump having with clearly underage girls who look like Ivanka. Story 74 phones are built to break after 2 years. Every phone I get on the second-year anniversary, it just shits the bed. In the past, it was that it wouldn't run apps correctly, but I think the normal updates to the different OS have improved that. My past 2 phones were battery life like clockwork. They'd stop holding a charge on 2 years. My current phone I will have for 2 years next month. The battery is going great. Everything runs perfectly on it, but something that has literally never happened on any of my other phones before screen burn, and like, it's always something every single time. Story 75, that not many, but rather the vast majority of men have sociopathic traits. Most men lie and are very good at it, but women wave it away as men just being not as socially attuned, and men understand that violence is bad, but they simply don't care. The Giselle Pellicott case, the discovery of Telegram rape chats, the high rates of child brides, and trafficking globally, how men behave in times in war when the threat of legal consequences is tossed to the wind, and then in addition to how many gay men and heterosexual women have just disclosed personal horror stories to me, it's firmly shifted my perspective. I think most men are sociopaths or have sociopathic traits, and true empathy in men is very rare, and I think the vast majority of women are entirely blind to their husbands and boyfriends not being an exception to this. Ladies, men are just as emotionally and socially intelligent as you are. They're not stupid. Men are not stupid. They're very smart. They simply do not care. Their moral bar is not where yours is. Story 76 banks are the biggest money laundering operations. They even launched a coup in Bolivia many years ago when a new government cracked down on drug trafficking. Story 77, the increase in autism in the population is not just a tendency to overdiagnose, but the result of drug, chemical, and environmental pollution in the food supply that is consumed by the mother, especially growth hormones and veterinary drugs in livestock. Story 78, with the discovery of quantum receptors or microtubules in brain neurons. Human consciousness is a collection or field of particles interacting with each other. Also totally a stretch, but mother's instinct could come from some quantum entanglement of particles passed down through pregnancy in their child's neurons and only manifests in moments of extreme emotions, ESP, fear, anxiety. Last part is probably a total perversion of our current scientific understanding, but hey, something fun to think about. Story 79, the murderer of JonBenet Patricia Ramsey was none other than her kid brother and was covered up by her mother potentially without her father's knowledge. Both parents insist that the family was asleep all night. Yet when police arrived, the mother was still wearing clothing and makeup from the day prior. And in the initial 911 call, you can hear what sounds like a young child frantically apologizing to a parent. Edit refreshing my memory. Yeah, the brother 100 did it. ID forgotten that had previously put his sister in the ER and that she had pre-mortem injuries that matched being hit and even stabbed with his toys. There's a very good documentary by Matt Orchard on YouTube that covers all of the evidence and theories.